Hello and welcome to this short educational film. Today we'll be talking about cinematography, helping you get a better understanding of cinematography and fleshing out some of the more intricate parts of camera operation. We'll be referencing many of RedShare student-made films in this video, and all of them can be watched on the RedShare Productions YouTube channel. To begin with, we are going to discuss aperture, focal length, and depth of field, three subjects that are very closely connected. An aperture ring is situated on the lens of a camera, and can be widened or contracted to change the aperture size. The aperture itself is the hole situated in the center of the aperture ring, which allows light to pass through it. Apertures can be described in relation to the human eye, much like many other parts of a camera. In this case, the aperture parallels the pupil. By expanding or shrinking, it will allow more or less light to enter the retina, thus changing the brightness of our perception to more appropriately see our surroundings. This process is very much the same for apertures. Making use of different sizes of aperture allows the camera operator to decide how much exposure they want their film to have, to either brighten or darken an image. Larger aperture sizes will create a brighter image, and a smaller aperture size will create a darker image. There are many things you can do to balance out aperture size with the camera's actual light intake, such as the ISO and shutter speed, which could also affect the camera light intake. Aperture also has an effect on the depth of field and focal length of a camera. Depth of field is also similar to the human eye. Notice that when you look at anything at all with your eyes, you are only ever able to focus on one thing anywhere in your vision. You can still see the things surrounding it, but everything seems slightly blurred. This is because your eyes are constantly changing the focal length of your eyes to match the distance of whatever it is you are looking at. In cameras, this isn't as forced, meaning it can be changed, enhanced, and used to the advantage of the camera operator to create a more sharp or more focused image. Creating a high depth of field requires a higher f-number. But if you're new to this whole thing, you're probably wondering what is an f-number. F-numbers, otherwise known as the aperture stops, are the terms used in the calculation of focal length and depth of field. A larger aperture will create a lower f-number, which will create a wider depth of field, meaning more things can be in focus at once in an image. Then vice versa with smaller apertures, they create higher f-numbers, which create far more narrow depth of field, and creating a very sharp layer of an image while blurring out the rest. Center of focus is the point or distance at which the camera will be focused on the most. It is calculated using the focal length. Many different things can have an effect on the focal length, such as the zoom of the image, the f-numbers, and the aperture. Basically put, the distance from the center of the lens to the point of focus is the focal length. The next section of this video is going to be about the different types of camera shots, as well as camera angles and camera movement. An establishing shot is used to set a scene, and should be used to introduce a new location. This gives the audience an idea of the place, and the time of when the film is based. It can be used to show the outside of where a scene is taking place, such as a house or skyscraper. For example, if we open a scene with an establishing shot of a warehouse, and then cut to a dark room, then the audience comes to an understanding that the dark room is inside the warehouse shown at the start of the scene. An extreme close-up is created by placing a camera very close to something. This type of shot is used to create emphasis on emotional objects in a scene, and also helps the audience see the detail that would have been lost in wider shots. For example, an extreme close-up on someone's eyes could show which direction they are looking and their current emotional state, such as being happy, alert, or scared. Alternatively, it can be used for showing smaller objects in a scene, say for example the words that someone is writing down on paper. A close-up is a slightly more zoomed-out version of the extreme close-up. It is used to show an object or expression of importance such as a person's face. Most of the time, the larger background in these shots becomes obscured, showing mainly just the object in question. For example, this could be someone's face as they react to something they just had to witness, or an object in someone's hand as they make use of it. An over-the-shoulder shot is created by placing the camera just behind someone's shoulder and facing it ahead or behind of them. It is used to show the scene from someone's point of view, but at a slightly different angle for what they're actually seeing. You can imagine it almost being like a third-person point of view. It generally shows what the character is looking at, and is very useful in one-to-one conversations in movies when you want to see what the other character is saying. A point of view shot shows what the character is actually seeing. This shot makes the audience step into the character's shoes as if they are part of the film. Unlike an over-the-shoulder shot, this shot shows the world through the first-person perspective. It allows the audience to literally see through a character's eyes. For example, during many horror movies, the camera sometimes switches to the perspective of a character to heighten the tension of the scene. If a character is being hunted, then so are we. A mid-shot shows a person from their head to their waist. It is often used during conversation or when a character has to express something using not only their face, but their body as well. This is used in situations such as when a character would throw their hands in the air, or put them on their head in an emotional expression. It can also be used as a way to emphasize a character's presence in a scene, depending on the framing. The shot is very good for when you want to show someone's importance. A long shot includes the whole body of the character. It is used to show both the characters and the background. This helps to give an understanding of who the characters are and where they are in that scene, while still showing the general character movement and expression. A low-angle shot is placed slightly lower than the character, looking up at them. This causes the character to look more powerful, more in control, and significantly more intimidating. It can be used to demonstrate the power or dominance of a character in the scene, or to make another character seem small in comparison. A high-angle shot is the opposite of the low angle, in that it is placed much higher to make the character look weaker and more vulnerable. The higher angle makes the character look smaller in comparison, and thus much less threatening. A worm's eye view is a far more extreme version of the low-angle shot. It shows the scene from the lowest possible point on the ground and looking up. Its use in cinema is rather infrequent, but it still serves as a use to make the scene look a bit more stylish. A bird's eye view is a shot taken directly from above a character. This is usually done with a crane or other device used to gain a height advantage. It can also be used as an establishing shot, or can be blended with other shots using camera movement to create that kind of scene introduction that usually only establishing shots can accomplish. Speaking of camera movement, before moving on, we'll talk about the movement of the camera. A panning shot is where the camera rotates on the spot to change the objects of focus in the scene, or to maintain the view on someone as they move around the shot. This can be used to follow people or objects as they pass by the camera. For example, if a character is sprinting down a pathway, as they approach the camera and pass by, the camera could rotate to show them continue sprinting away in the opposite direction. A tracking shot tracks characters or objects by following them in backward, forward, left or right movement. The effect of this camera movement is that it creates a sense of danger, or can be used for a stylistic effect. For example, a person is running very fast from one end of a field to the other. The camera follows behind the person, making the scene very tense. A dolly shot has the camera moving on a platform forwards or backwards. This rig allows the camera to move easily on a set of wheels or tracks. This creates a shot with no shakes and is more fluent in its presentation. A zoom shot is where the camera is static, but the image grows or shrinks. It is quite simple to create. Simply zoom in using the camera zoom function or during post-production. You see this a lot in interviews when an interviewee is preparing to give a meaningful or emotional response. The camera does this to capture every ounce of emotion and expression as possible without compromising the shot. A tilt shot follows the person or object looking up and down. This can be used to follow someone walking up a flight of stairs, for example, what you're seeing on screen now. A pedestal shot is when the camera is picked up or put down on the ground, manually or using a pedestal rig. That's just about everything you need to know about cinematography and camera shots, but let's move on to the more technical side, with frames. Video is shown in frames, with each single frame representing one single image. When you view a sequence of frames with consistent timing and movement, it can trick your brain into seeing it as actual movement, not just the changing of pixels on a screen, one after the other. However, in order to effectively conjure this trickery, there has to be some consistency between the frame rates. Thus, we have the different standards. Here in the UK, we have 25 frames per second, 25 still images being fired with a new one added every 0.04 seconds to create the illusion of movement. In the United States, they use 30 frames per second, which equates to a 0.03 millisecond delay. And while the technology isn't quite there yet, video gaming systems are stretching their frame rates out to 60 frames per second for home consoles, and are limitlessly climbing higher on specialized gaming computers. So now you know what the frame rates are, and where we use them, but there are a few more intricacies than one might originally think. Slow motion cameras are a wonderful tool allowing us to capture video footage at a speed faster than any human could possibly observe with any level of clarity. To achieve this, slow motion cameras shoot at an astoundingly high frame rate, but then slow the video down so that we view the video at 30 or 60 frames per second, allowing us to see each frame or shot with a much greater level of clarity. If you've ever wondered why trying to make slow motion with perhaps your phone camera doesn't work properly, it's because when you slow down the footage captured, which is probably only shot at 30 frames per second, because there is such a dramatic frame rate loss, it is difficult for your brain to maintain the illusion of movement, and you see the frames for what they really are, still pictures, one after the other. Just don't mess around with the frame rate, or reality itself will collapse.